All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a profound diagnostic audit of the human psyche. We are going to weave together ancient philosophy, some really cutting-edge neuroscience, and depth psychology. Our goal? To understand exactly why we perceive the world the way we do, and more importantly, how we can actually synthesize the deeply fragmented parts of our reality. So let's dive right in by examining what we might call the light-only path. This is a dangerous, incredibly common trap. It's this deeply ingrained illusion we have that static, unchanging peace is somehow the ultimate goal of human existence. I want you to imagine a perfect, glowing white marble sphere floating in complete blackness. It looks absolutely flawless, right? But the undeniable reality of thermodynamics tells us that this perfect sphere must eventually crack. It's going to develop intricate fissures, it's going to glitch, and it will decay into raw entropy. We crave permanent stability so badly, but the universe simply does not operate that way.
You know, as the philosopher Alan Watts reminded his students during his final summer back in 1973, existence is fleeting, it's intrinsically imperfect. He loved to reference this beautiful line from the Buddhist Diamond Sutra, pointing out that life is just like a bubble, a dewdrop, or a flash of lightning. And hearing that really forces us to question a fundamental human behavior. If life is naturally this rushing, unpredictable flow, why on earth does humanity constantly try to fracture, compartmentalize, and control it?
Well, to understand our bizarre obsession with control, we have to look back at ancient esoteric frameworks. Take Gnosticism, for example. They introduced this fascinating concept of the demiurge. In ancient texts like the Gospel of Judas and the Pista Sophia, the demiurge is described as this disillusioned force that artificially splits a beautifully unified spiritual universe into flawed physical fragments. The demiurge builds a mechanical physical world, and here's the kicker: it mistakenly believes itself to be the ultimate creator. This illustrates a profound Gnostic split. On one side, you have the original, unified spiritual reality. Picture an expansive, organic, celestial nebula filled with golden starlight and flowing water. On the other side, you have the physical, fragmented world. To the Gnostics, this physical world, obsessed with rigid laws, grids, and boundaries, is merely an imperfect, compartmentalized echo of a much deeper truth. It's like the relentless grinding mechanical gears of a clock, desperately trying to mimic eternity. Now, contrast that rigid, fragmented worldview with something entirely different. Think about Alan Watts' famous circular, wooden yurt-shaped library tucked away in Muir Woods. If you've ever seen it, you'll notice there are absolutely no harsh corners. It's beautifully organic, almost mandala-like. It was inside this very space that Watts explored the Taoist concept of the Watercourse Way, perfectly symbolizing a holistic, flowing universe that yields to nature rather than frantically trying to trap it inside a rigid grid.
And that brings us to a major breakthrough for this explainer. Perfect order and pure chaos are not enemies. They just aren't opposing forces at war with each other. Rather, they are opposite poles of one underlying unified existence. Picture swirling currents of black ink and luminous gold liquid colliding and wrapping around each other without ever fully mixing, like a dynamic 3D yin and yang in constant motion. Order and chaos, light and dark, they are simply two dynamic expressions of a single fluid substance.
This crucial point is perfectly captured in the 17th century philosophy of Baruch Spinoza. Spinoza formulated the concept of monism, encapsulated in his famous phrase, Deus, sive, Natura, which translates to God or nature. He argued that reality isn't split into the spiritual and the physical at all. Instead, it is a single, inseparable, absolutely infinite substance. Imagine an intricate, glowing quantum particle field of intertwined neon red and blue light streams where every single thing is deeply interconnected. That is Spinoza's universe.
Spinoza's unified reality essentially argues that only one substance exists, and literally nothing exists outside of it. By doing this, he rejects a personal, anthropomorphic creator, proposing instead that God and nature are entirely synonymous. It's a radically different philosophical framework. He neutrally and logically dismantled the idea of an external judging deity standing outside of creation. Everything is infinitely interconnected, which completely shatters that Gnostic idea of a fragmented world created by a detached demiurge.
But here is the multi-million-dollar question. If reality is truly one infinite, flowing substance, why does human society constantly try to chop it up? Where does this demiurgic urge come from?
Well, Iain McGilchrist's groundbreaking neuroscience actually provides the answer. He shows us there is a literal split in our brains.
He defines the right hemisphere as the master. This side uses broad attention. It's holistic, and it embraces flow and deep meaning. The left hemisphere is the emissary, which relies on narrow focus, fragments reality, and honestly, loves a good spreadsheet. The left brain takes the whole living, breathing world and breaks it down into explicit, manageable pieces.
The massive problem we face today, as McGilchrist points out, is that our modern world is entirely trapped in the left brain's grip. We are experiencing the symptoms of extreme left brain dominance. We prefer abstract management systems over actual hands-on craft. We replace the rushing river of organic life with an alienating environment of dead surfaces, straight lines, and mechanical control. We have literally externalized a hall of mirrors, a terrifying feedback loop, where our logic just endlessly leads back to the system itself.
And this obsession with control is aggressively enforced by something called the left brain interpreter. Developed by neuropsychologists Michael Gazzaniga and Joseph Ledoux, this is a mechanism in the left hemisphere that obsessively generates causal inferences. It constantly rationalizes, it invents explanations, and it desperately tries to force the unpredictable, chaotic universe into neat, manageable, logical boxes. It is, quite literally, the biological equivalent of the demiurge, constantly trying to explain away the unknown.
However, as we established earlier with our melting marble sphere, the infinite substance of reality refuses to be permanently caged. The perfect sphere absolutely must crack. When the left brain's rigid systems become too oppressive, chaos returns. And this brings us to the ultimate disruptor of static peace, the Jungian Trickster. Imagine a crowd walking under a street lamp, and suddenly, one long, exaggerated shadow detaches from its person, twisting into a massive archetypal force. That is the trickster stepping onto the stage. Representing our collective shadow, the trickster is an archetypal force that embodies absolute paradox. As an archetype, it is sly, mischievous, highly unpredictable, and totally transgressive. It operates purely from the unconscious, constantly defying convention and breaking taboos. And it rapidly deploys these disruptive traits to shatter the left brain's carefully constructed illusions, tearing down those obsessive logical grids.
Now, while the trickster's chaos seems pretty terrifying to our neat left brain sensibilities, psychotherapist June Singer explains that it is actually a vital psychological governor. It cures our hubris. It humbles our haughty left brain ambitions when we become way too inflated or detached from the natural flow of reality. The trickster destroys the stagnant order so that true, organic life can finally breathe again. It's simultaneously destructive and incredibly healing.
So this leaves us at a profound crossroads. We have this tension between order and chaos, between the left and the right hemispheres, between the demiurge and the trickster. But this demands a dialectical synthesis rather than a never-ending war. Picture a heavy brass and obsidian precision gyroscope spinning smoothly, glowing with amber light. It stabilizes itself against external wobble, balancing perfectly on a razor's edge. That is exactly the synthesis we are aiming for.
McGilchrist actually outlines how this synthesis happens neurologically. It's a beautiful three-step dance. First, the right hemisphere grounds the initial, holistic experience of the world. Second, the left hemisphere steps in to unpack, clarify, and analyze the specific parts. But here is the absolutely crucial third step. The right hemisphere must then reintegrate those explicit parts back into a newly enriched whole, the broad view and the narrow focus finally working together in harmony. By embracing this exact synthesis of all our fragmented parts, the dark and the light, the intuitive and the logical, we arrive at the ultimate equation for the sovereign self, 3P equals S. Think about your Tuesday morning commute, or the persona you put on at the workplace. When you stop compartmentalizing and finally integrate your personal, private, and professional selves into one cohesive whole, you achieve true sovereignty. It's like two opposing light streams, one deep crimson, one electric cyan, meeting at a center point and bursting into a beautiful golden fractal mandala.
So, I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. The illusion of static perfection is actively decaying around us. The left brain's mechanical grip is constantly being challenged by the natural rushing watercourse of reality. In a world desperate for artificial order, will you continue to fight the trickster and the chaos, or will you let it teach you how to become entirely whole? Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep your gyroscope spinning and keep learning.